Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Yap, and welcome to another episode of Yap with Dr. Yap. I am here with Jorielle. Jorielle, you have to introduce yourself to everybody.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jorielle Nunag. I'm an account director at Media Profile. We are Canada's largest employee-owned agency. And yeah, I cover tech B2B communications, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
All right, thank you. Well, thank you for being here. Tell us a little bit about what a communications agency do. What does your company do?
Yes. Well, thanks for having me. To start, so communications agencies do anything and everything that has to do with rolling out announcements and supporting different accounts. Our agency specifically is a full service agency. So we'll do everything from like drafting press releases, doing communications with clients, to even leading on the digital front and recommending campaigns for social platforms and things like that. So we're divided into like account leads and those who deal with communications and the clients. And then we also have a digital team, as well as, and within that, like consumer and corporate work.
Mhm. Now, has the idea of personal brand been
Hmm.
like incorporated into what you do, I'm presuming? Yes.
Yeah,
Uh, and
definitely.
has that changed post-COVID? Or is there more like a requirement to make sure that you have a very good personal brand?
Yeah, I think
Tell us a
it's
little bit about that.
yeah, so it's definitely changed. And I think it's important to like anyone starting out in the industry to know that it like is a big part of like what you do. Not necessarily in terms of like the work you do, but more just like it's always important to kind of like highlight your skill sets, what sets you apart from other communicators. And with the world just moving so much more into the digital realm, people are definitely like watching what you do. And that's not, I don't want anyone to think that that's in a bad way at all. I think it's just a good way to like grow your platform. So, for example, my expertise has always been the tech and B2B space. So I like to talk about, the trends I'm seeing online, the work that's being done at the agency and like the reporters that I've worked with. But at the same time, like my personal like hobbies tend to come into play too. Like, don't ever feel like you can't be yourself, I'd say. And for example, running is a big part of my life, and I will, post about the runs I do and like the camaraderie between the teammates that I work or like run with. So it's all a nice balance that kind of like encompasses who you are.
Right. Now, you and I have spoken about common mistakes young professionals have actually incorporated into their social media,
Right.
and what should they be doing right now?
I think it's in terms of common mistakes, I always say like it's important to just be as informed as you can be with what's happening in the landscape. I know that opinions are always going to be flying on the internet. It's good to like read up on what's happening, be like totally open and like forward with what you want to talk about. And if that's something that you are, more inclined to do, that's great. But just getting both sides of the story and like having like all the facts is important. I also find that in instances where people kind of regret what they say, they're like very quick to deleting a comment and things like that. People will have different opinions on this, but I always feel like it's important to own up to what you said if you're going to say it. And so, if you're experiencing commentary or like backlash, like it's good to address it head on and like kind of own up to your like if it's a mistake, it's good to own up to it and like I think your audience will respect you for that.
Hmm. And now, what happens for individuals, for example, using AI, and suddenly now that is part of what their brand looks like? How do you kind of merge that together? If there's even a space for it.
Yeah, so the use of AI, I'd say, is integrated in so many different ways in the industry, both like from a storytelling perspective and from like our own use in communications. I'd say that like it's great for synthesizing materials, research, things like that. Still a layer of gut checking that needs to be done because like no software is perfect, but I like to use it for those things. I also find that like a lot of different tech companies and not even just tech companies, it's integrating into so many different industries that like clients will have new AIs that they're integrating, AI that they're developing, all sorts of things. So there's like no shortage of talk around AI. And so I always like to say like it's not, I know that there's some like hesitancy around it. It's a technology that's coming to the forefront, and it's important to embrace it and learn it and see how it suits your industry rather than like shying away from it.
Right. Now, what happens if the actual individuals, because they have to balance, I'm guessing, uh, the work they do and their brand as part of a discipline that they are part of. So whatever that the role is or industry they are at. And then there's also the personal one, which is what you have said, right?
Yes, right.
Now, in doing the balance, um, I have seen some individuals actually using the AI component into the personal side. And then suddenly now it looks like it's so structured, like it's a robot reading it now.
Right.
So suddenly,
Yeah.
how do you then address that when somebody calls you on?
Right. I think it's so dependent on the person. And I think that like communications is a good example. I find that people are more inclined to own up to like the whether it's like content or writing that they've used AI for. Um, I'd say that like it's just important to have an open conversation about things. If you feel that someone's using AI and it's not necessarily authentic, um, then it's like totally warranted to have a conversation with them about it. I think for my own personal brand, like just keep in mind that on the note of authenticity, I think it's important to like stay true to who you are and your values, and like no one's gonna describe yourself or explain yourself better than you. And like an AI can support with things like vocabulary and like syntax and all those other grammatical things, but at the same time you should still stick to who you are and like amplify that your way.
I totally agree with you.
Hmm.
So, what would your advice be for somebody who's starting and they're coming from various countries and immigrants, for example, or newcomers, and they're coming into our environment and work environment? Any suggestions on how they go about ensuring that their digital footprint is to the expectation of this environment?
Right. I always say from the jump, like your network is so important. And I think it's important to like make the connections within the industry, even outside of the industry. But if, say, you're looking to learn more about communications, like connect with communications experts, whether they're in the agency world or like the corporate world. And then always just be cognizant that everything you put on the internet is permanent, whether that's like deleted later or like you change your perspective on things. Just know that that is always going to be part of the environment. And so, depending on how you want to present yourself, that could be as professional and formal as you want or as informal as you want. So, and both have like positives. So, I'd say just be cognizant of the fact that like your digital footprint is part of your presence and part of your identity. So that's something that'll stay with you.
Right. Now, on a personal side, do you have
Mhm.
any tools or resources you can share?
Tools in terms of building your personal brand.
Yeah.
Um, I like to use a few different things. So, I mean, there are the platforms that everyone likes to like amplify their presence on, like social media platforms. I mean, like Instagram and TikTok. I think that that's a good way to also stay informed. If it's about your own brand in general, I, in the early days, had a website for myself where I published, or posted rather, anything I published, any news I've even secured, really anything that you want captured in like how people like perceive you and like your skill sets. And I'd say like keeping as informed as you can on the trends and then speaking to it if you feel comfortable. And how I do that is like I'll set Google alerts up on say like what's happening in the technology space. And that could be within like the healthcare space, which I have clients for, and like or you know the travel space, things like that. And then understanding the trend, speaking to reporters and people in your network, and then if you feel comfortable, like publishing an opinion on it. Or even
Right.
posting, like it doesn't have to be like this big thing where you like drafted like a novel. It's more just like here's an opinion, here's something that like you were passionate about and wanted to talk about.
That's great.
Mhm.
Now, pulling your crystal ball,
Yes.
looking ahead 5 years from now, what does the world look like in your world?
Oh, what does the world look like in my world? I things change so rapidly, Robin, that I just think that like AI, of course, is going to be more integrated. I think that technology is going to continue to advance. And it's important to stay on top of that. I think from a media perspective, a lot of the work I do is with media. The landscape and like outlets and publishers, they've changed so much that I think that the way that news is going to be presented will change, maybe likely more on the digital front. But that's not to say that like earned media is dead. I think that it's important and it's relevant and it has like a reputation that of like factual knowledge. So I think that there will be a merge of the two more so than there is now.
That's wonderful. Thank you so
Mm.
much.
Of
And we're going
course.
to look at what that would look like 5 years from now. And we're going to
Exactly.
talk at
You'll
that
have to
point.
yeah, I was like, you'll have to revisit me in 5 years.
Well, we better meet before then, but yes.
Exactly, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to
Of
chat with
course.
us today. I'm sure our audiences would love hearing from you some more. And thank you. I appreciate your time.
Of course. Anytime.